background here. Gladstone spending the last 8 seasons with the Rams. 4 of them, he was the Rams director of scouting strategy, now going from one coast to the other and finding a home in Jacksonville. Time to read and react to some of the biggest news from the week, with Myles Garrett requesting a trade out of Cleveland. Jayden Hutchinson was asked about adding him in Detroit.
We were just talking about what could be, and although it's probably unlikely, I think I would be thrilled to play next to him if it were to happen. But our whole D-line would be totally elevated. That'd be a scary defensive line, and we get along too. I think I've seen him these last few years at different things. He texted me after I got hurt, which I don't know, it was just a cool thing. Guys outside of your own team who reach out to you, I think. So I think he's a good dude, and if he does, great. But I don't know. We'll see. Yeah. We'll see. But that would be awesome.
Can you imagine, Mina? What do you think of Garrett potentially joining the Lions defense?
Yeah, it doesn't take someone who watches a lot of tape to tell you that this would be absolutely terrifying. It'd be the best 4-man rush in the NFL. It's an obvious no-brainer for the Lions, as it is for every other team, and for Garrett, by the way, who wants to play for a Super Bowl contender. If I have hesitation, it's only financial. Myles Garrett's going to want a new, very expensive contract. Jayden Hutchinson is about to enter his contract year, so potentially you would be looking at 2 top-of-the-market edge rusher, very expensive contracts, and that would be tricky for the Lions. But you still pursue it because this is a team that was knocking on the door of the Super Bowl.
Yeah, you talk about the pressure and the sacks. Speaking of that, let's go to Kansas City, where Patrick Mahomes was sacked 6 times in the Super Bowl loss to the Eagles. And now it's unlikely guard Trey Smith will get tagged by the Chiefs. Smith was a key member of that offensive line. It looks like he'll be headed to free agency. This is not a good sign for Patrick Mahomes. You can make the case that he had the least amount of protection in his career this past season. He was sacked, blitzed, and hit at the highest rate of his career, and the only season he was pressured more was his first year as a starter in 2018. So, Damien, how badly do the Chiefs need to keep Trey Smith?
Well, ideally, you want to try to keep that interior intact, because we saw what happened when they, had Joe Thuney playing out of place at left tackle. You compromised the whole unit of the offensive line, and you've already allocated resources to Joe Thuney and Creed Humphrey. It's going to be very expensive to keep Trey Smith there, but they can't go any further without all this Band-Aid type stuff on the offensive line. We saw what happened in the Super Bowl, where Patrick Mahomes were under siege all day with that Philadelphia Eagles front four. They got to address this in a big way.
Never got comfortable in the pocket there, feeling the pressure. Let's get to some draft news. Top quarterback prospect Cam Ward, he had this to say about teams that pass him up. Quote, "If you don't draft me, that's your fault. You've got to remember you're the same team that's got to play me for the rest of my career, and I'll remember that." Let's welcome in our draft analyst, Matt Miller, as he joins us for this one. Matt, what do you think of Ward's statement?
I love it. You love the confidence. Now, I'm not sure if I agree with it completely, but I love the confidence of him saying, I'm the elite quarterback in this draft, when in a draft where no one has really established themselves as such. Now, I do think teams, as we get ready for the NFL Scouting Combine next week, see Cam Ward as the top quarterback. He's the most dynamic mover, as you see with his legs. He certainly has the best arm talent of the top quarterbacks to make some of those big throws down the field. He can dial up velocity on the move. I love how he can manipulate his arm angle. So I approve of this message, him putting it out there. I'm the guy in this class. If you don't take me, I'll just beat you every time I play you from here on out. I think Tom Brady and Patrick Mahomes have had a lot of success with that same messaging to teams. So I like that Cam Ward's jumping on this train as well.
That imaginary chip on your shoulder. Now, keep in mind the top 2 teams, the Titans and Browns, are looking for quarterback help in the draft. Mina, Ward and Shedeur Sanders are the consensus top 2 QBs among our draft experts. When you watch the tape, who's your number 1 quarterback?
It's Cam Ward, now that I've had some time to watch both these quarterbacks on tape. The biggest discrepancy, Matt alluded to this to me, is just arm talent. Ward makes all of the high-level, difficult NFL throws. Talking about the deep outs from the opposite hash, the hole shot, some of those anticipatory throws over the middle of the field. And it's not just that he has the tools, he also used them against good defenses in college. There's concerns, to be sure. Pocket presence comes to mind, decision-making here and there. He's not a perfect prospect. But I think the ceiling for him being the highest of all of the quarterbacks involved is why I would take him first if I was an NFL team picking near the top of the draft.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat, Mina. And I think it's important to note we've been spoiled by quarterbacks the last 2 years. Bryce Young, CJ Stroud, last year Caleb Williams, Jayden Daniels, Drake May. These guys aren't in that class. So when we talk about them, it's like, hey, he might be QB1, but there's some wrinkles that you got to iron out. Pocket presence has to get better. He forced a lot of errors last year, whether it was fumbles or just missed throws, interceptions, because he's trying to make too much happen. We saw that struggle with Caleb Williams this past year, where you have to learn to play on time. I would say for Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders, that's where their games have to really elevate quickly. I like Cam Ward more because I think his mobility will get him out of some of the trouble that both these guys put themselves in by not trusting their offensive line.
Cam Ward currently holds the record, keep in mind, for most passing touchdowns in Division I history. All right, we have new developments coming in today in the accusations of sexual misconduct against Ravens kicker Justin Tucker. Investigators for the NFL have been in Baltimore speaking to some of the women who accused Tucker of misconduct, a source telling ESPN. 3 women have spoken with investigators, with another 2 scheduled to do so, according to a report by the Baltimore Banner. In a statement to ESPN today, a league spokesperson said this: "We do not provide details or updates of the review process while investigations are ongoing." Still to come here on NFL.
Months how they're going to handle their quarterback situation if they draft with their pick a franchise guy to perhaps potentially replace Deshaun Watson or at least compete with him. But really, for the time being, the question is what happens with Myles Garrett? He obviously has made clear that he wants to be traded. This now is the priority for the coming weeks. The problem with this is if it's palatable for the Browns to do that, it would have to be after June 1st. Before June 1st, if they were to do that, which obviously would be ideal because they'd get the compensation for this coming draft, but the salary cap number is just brutal for them. The amount of dead cap space they would take really isn't something that they want to do. So for me, it's figuring out a way to convince Myles Garrett to stay in the building, perhaps in the form of a very lucrative long-term deal. But this is not a great situation for the Browns. They've got to figure out a way to make Garrett happier.
So what does Cleveland need to prioritize this offseason, Sam?
It's not Myles Garrett. It's the quarterback position. It's hands down the quarterback position. I don't care how happy Myles Garrett is. If you're not situated at the QB position when you're the Cleveland Browns, you're going to have issues. 2 years ago, the Browns had the #1 defense in the entire NFL, and I get it. Myles Garrett is a huge part of that. But they have struggled at quarterback, and Deshaun Watson has not been the answer. He's been injured. He hasn't played well since the suspension from years ago, and so he's been too up and down. And so if the Cleveland Browns want to compete in the AFC, they need to get their quarterback situation situated as soon as possible. The defense, I think, will be fine. Of course, Myles Garrett is important, but he's not the most important. It's quarterback for sure.
Okay, sticking with you, Sam. Quarterback in free agency, draft a quarterback. You need to get it situated. What's the best way to get it situated right now in Cleveland?
Yeah, I'm not afraid to go and draft a quarterback in this year's draft. I'm not overly sold on either Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders at that early. But if you need to try and reset it, go ahead and try and get a quarterback that's not only on a lesser contract, but someone that you could potentially build your future around. You still have Deshaun Watson under contract if in fact he gets healthy later on at the end of this season or what his future holds. And so for me, you can draft a young quarterback and then keep Deshaun Watson on your roster as he's still under contract.
All right. Jeff says Myles Garrett. Got to get Myles Garrett. He's smiling.
Hey, no, Myles Garrett first.
All of
Quarterback's coming.
All of it. And Hannah says
All of it,
all
the
of it.
whole
We got to
thing.
get the whole thing taken care
Oh,
of.
Cleveland.
Sam, Jeff, Thank you, man. Appreciate you.
All right, SportsCenter roll.